thank you for coming this morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We are just one shy of a quorum, but I have faith that another person is going to show up in this chilly morning, and we'll be fine. I do want to take a moment this morning, you guys, and have a moment of silence for Dr. Butterfass. If we could all take a moment. Thank you, everyone. Our prayers and wishes are with his family and all, and thank you for everybody. So this morning, we have the minutes from the November meeting. We won't be able to vote on them, but if anyone has any additions, deletions, corrections, or anything they want to have happen, please bring it forward, let me know, and stop me at any time. The stroke designation and destination such has been a hot button ticket here. We've gotten quite a few from the Department of Health for stroke center designations. We've been working on regionally a destination advisory. Mike, did you want to bring up anything about it, or?
It should have been distributed to the group following the last meeting.
I saw it on an email.
Right.
But I don't know if everybody saw it.
Did everybody get a chance to see that? Did everybody receive it? You sent it out following the last meeting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If you're interested, I'll bring a copy. We could either make additional or read it. It's up to you. Or don't read it and just discuss it. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's we sent out everybody looked at the last one, the last meeting. However, you sent it out with a little bit of additional information on it. Why don't we just discuss? I think the only thing we really changed was some of the verbiage for destination, right? And on the last page, the algorithm, the little chart.
Yeah, so that's what you want me to take copies? So that's what we really, the REMO area had done this initially, so essentially we took theirs and just made some modifications, put the chart in to make it easier flowing to review. I think that the biggest challenge that we have until the designations come out is how do we designate in the meantime? Who's making that determination? And I think that's the biggest challenge that the REMO area had as well. So provided you felt comfortable in making those designations for the different centers, you could proceed with this. But we were kind of waiting for the state to implement the program over the next year or two.
Yeah, March of 21.
March of 21 before we implemented it.
So they are putting some out. Good Samaritan, but this is West Islip, Long Island, Montefiore, NYU Langone, the Brooklyn campus. So they have put out some, but it seems like they're mostly, affiliated with the inner city, New York City hospitals. And Tisch at NYU was given the designation. So I think it's going to be a long while before it's done, completed through this state. So I think what we should probably do is have some kind of policy so people have, or what we can call an advisory, so that people have a guide of where to go and what to do and what's available, so that everyone understands the whole process of, a comprehensive center versus just a stroke center. What's the three verbiage?
There's
Endovascular capable.
There's four.
Oh, they added the endovascular.
There's no stroke.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I'm thinking three. I'm thinking three because there's yeah.
Thrombectomy capable.
There's no stroke. There's primary. There's thrombectomy capable. There's comprehensive.
And comprehensive.
So,
yeah. Sorry,
So
I didn't think about zero.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the sort of problems or I think challenges to us and EMS is that in this sort of transition period, though we're waiting for all the hospitals to officially declare, is where do our EMS folks take people? And there are a lot of political and legal pressures that are out there, and people are saying, I got taken to a no-stroke center or a primary care stroke center, and right down the street was a comprehensive. But we don't have a system yet to decide where they go. So, I'm just worried, almost even worried about some of the legal challenges of people saying, you should have taken this person, directly to this comprehensive stroke center. Why did you go down the street to, your primary stroke center? Until we get on that, we have to have something in place on that March 30, or how many days in March? 30? On March 30th of 21, we definitely have to have something in place so all our folks know where to go. But what do we do in between that time? That's, as you were saying, that's the big question, because all of our EMS folks are asking, well, what should I do? I want to do the right thing by the patient. And I know that, whatever, Montefiore is a stroke center, or I know this one's a stroke, a comprehensive. Shouldn't I go there?
So if the letters are starting to come out, we probably should adopt the advisory so that in the event that one of the letters is issued for this region, that we are already prepared to go.
And I think, I forget on the last page, did you have, did we identify each institution, or we were going to just designate what each center has?
The capabilities.
Capabilities. Yeah, okay.
Right. And there really were only two choices. Unless you as a group want to break that down into all three levels based on some patient findings, but really it was down to two centers, two types of centers.
Right, but also the thing is we got to figure out how to make this dynamic, because it's going to be changing really almost by every month as people go through as the hospitals go through their surveys and get their designation. Whatever their official level is, you go through whatever, you're going to have the Joint Commission come in, accredit your hospital as a stroke, whatever level stroke center it is, and then you get the final approval from the state that you've gone through the accreditation process by one of the legitimate accrediting agencies. Now you've been certified, okay. But that, I think, is going to come in scattered all the way until March of 31st, so we got to be able to, so we don't completely confuse folks out there. They're going to be getting an update every month or two, saying now this one's comprehensive, now this one's thrombectomy capable, this one, so it's going to make our map constantly change. We got to figure out how to be able to do that.
I know this may be out of step with what a comprehensive stroke center would say, and they're looking at patients who get thrombectomy, so that small number and the success in those patients. We're looking at, as a community ED stroke center, we're looking at all those who come in with a possible stroke. And then if you take that number and then look at, okay, how many of those had a stroke? How many of those were TPA appropriate? How many of those are endarterectomy appropriate? How many of those actually get a procedure? It's a tiny number compared to those possible strokes. So if we're taking all of those patients and saying they would all be better off at a comprehensive stroke center, one, you're going to delay the care for many. You're going to take ambulances well out of their way. And the vast majority of those patients are going to get nothing but be at a comprehensive stroke center getting admitted. They're now not going to get TPA because they're out of the window because it took so long to get there, and they're not going to get a procedure either. So if you look at just those who got procedures, yes, they do better, but the vast majority of possible strokes don't get TPA. They get admitted to the hospital and they get further testing that can be done at any primary stroke center. So I don't know, and the decisions that we make on who to transfer to a comprehensive stroke center, we transfer far more than get a procedure. I get feedback not just on those who go out, but also on what happens to those patients. And even of those that we TPA or don't TPA and transfer, even that number.
It's the minority
of
that get it.
Procedure is tiny compared to the ones we transfer, and we don't transfer everybody. So I just think that, and that decision of who we transfer is not just based on what's the onset, what are the symptoms, but it's what's the imaging, what are their labs, what's their family situation, what do they want to do? It's based on so much else that you don't have, that the EMS doesn't have access to. So I don't know why we would put in their hands that decision when it's a challenging decision, even with vastly more information. I don't know why, unless someone meets really very specific criteria of this patient is an excellent candidate for thrombectomy. But that's a tiny percentage.
Yeah, the fast ED is what sort of stratifies them, so it has to be a major event.
And even that,
Right.
even a small percentage of those patients.
Right.
We'll get.
So the fast ED, well, there is no sensitive enough
Right.
prehospital stroke. This is not STEMI where there's a yes/no decision.
Right,
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at a neighboring region, right, so in New York City, we've been doing this for a while with the SLAMs, and our initial data shows that even those that go to the comprehensive stroke center directly, where you're not going an extra 30 minutes, right, there's one on almost every block, it's 50% that should have gone there, and of those, 30% of those that got an intervention, and then, only like 17% that they think benefits. So, it's even with a halfway decent decision tool, it's 50-50, and for most of these patients, the first step is still IV TPA, so, which you're then delaying, as opposed to a drip and ship strategy, at some of these places where you may have a longer transport time to get to a comprehensive. And the comprehensive has even said in our region that, if we start getting all the stroke, that will overwhelm us. We don't have the capacity for all these stroke patients, especially ones we're not going to do intervention on. So I'm not sure what the answer is. It's probably somewhere in between that, but we don't really have a good tool to pick these patients yet out in the field.
Well, I think probably the only benefit would be to not bring them to zero.
Yes.
Okay? So I think that's really the,
Such a tiny number.
right? That, maybe just by identifying zero is sufficient. I think that what you said is extremely correct. I mean, at ORMC, we get a ton of these patients, and we do ship to Westchester certain candidates, but it's a small number, like you said, and it's after the CTA, and it's after discussion with the endovascular surgeon and such. But they still get that great care and that great intervention. However, it is difficult to say, firsthand on the street who's going to be qualified for that intervention. I agree. So maybe what we can do is, pare it down to just talk about, so that people realize there's some zero centers and the other gamish.
That would be truly helpful.
And then we wouldn't have to change it so much, you know what I mean? Then it wouldn't be this, dynamic kind of document that's
Even
like
if you added in
changing.
Patients who are on anticoagulants and therapeutic, they can't get TPA, right? So that's another group of people that maybe, if they satisfy the score, should go directly.
Yeah.
Because we don't have other options.
So I'm an advocate for giving EMS the tools to be able to do their jobs. So by doing a Cincinnati stroke scale assessment, and then having a positive Cincinnati stroke, and then doing an LVO score of either FAST ED or Cincinnati stroke severity scale with a positive score of 2, that subset of patients has a 78 or 83% thrombolytic score that they have to have further care. Putting that patient in a higher level center makes good medical sense for those patients. Having the ability to do the scores in the field, and then also doing a thrombolytic checklist prior to arriving gives all the information to the ER. The other thing is, you can do the score and call med control and say, hey doc, do you want this patient? Because what I find is the doctors in the northern area of our region say, no, take that patient to a center that is A, thrombolytic capable, or a comprehensive center. On the comprehensive and the thrombolytics, it really is a solicitation of the state DOH right now to get that letter issued, as well as your certifications. So those are going to be dribs and drabs as they come through.
So I think that, it goes back to the point of just identifying the zero centers and, allowing you guys to talk to medical control. I think that's a great interaction. We talk about what the patient has, and then we can make that decision together. So I don't think we have to get too elaborate on the advisory, Mike. I think we can tone it down and just, make sure people understand what these centers are about. But that indeed, the safest thing would be that we talk to medical control and we discuss what it is and the time frame, what the patient's on, what the patient has, and
I think there'll be more variability. I mean, I'm all for talking to medical control, but there is obviously variability in providers and what you're up against. Well, gosh, I'm nearly at the end of my shift, maybe. Or it's a really busy day. It just shouldn't depend on those parameters. It should just be, this is a good candidate and it's not. And it will come to depend on other superfluous information that doesn't seem superfluous to that provider getting the call in that moment. So I would be a little cautious about that as well, but I think having some protocols is good. And I'm all for arming EMS. But I'm all for the best care for the patient. And as the vast majority of them don't end up getting any procedure, to send people away from their homes, to build up the hope that somehow this is going to be all better in 6 hours, when they get there and nothing gets done, even though they have the capability, but they're not appropriate. If we knew that beforehand, why do that? Why send the patient? Why build the hope for it? Why put EMS, having to transfer patients far away, potentially, when nothing is to be done? If we know that at the outset, why do that?
Right, and we want to arm them with tools, we want to arm them with accurate tools,
Absolutely.
right? So, quick literature search of the FAST-ED score. If you use greater than or equal to 4 cutoff, only 28% of thrombolysis candidates had LVO. That's not too great, 28%. You're going to take all those people. So how many are you going to transfer needlessly, right, to a comprehensive that's going to get nothing more than the primary? So I think, we need better tools.
And I think also, there's nothing wrong with them going to the TPA-capable institution and having the appropriate workup. And if there is a large vessel occlusion or something we can go after, then we, make that tertiary referral. I don't think anything's wrong with that.
That'll help operationally too. We just do not have the capacity in the system
Send
to
somebody
take people
hour away.
Yeah.
And then you take that care away from somebody who may really need it locally.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
for sure.
and the other thing, I think it also, in terms of the big picture, it further undermines community hospitals, which are fading as the days go by, as they drop out of the picture. However, I can just hear, what the pro comprehensive stroke people are saying. They're saying, you're burning 2 million brain cells every minute.
Yeah.
So, and we do know that the right destination the first time is the best. It doesn't matter what the disease process is, it's trauma, it's universal. But, until we sort of get something like, a obvious STEMI on, this hard piece of paper.
Ability to
we
tell.
outfit every ambulance with a, $100,000 ultrasound machine that they can hook up. It's a little cheaper than the CAT scanner, at least. And that will tell us whether they have an LVO or not, but.
One thing that Jeff said that makes a lot of sense, and I don't know whether it's feasible because it's a long list of contraindications, but for those patients that are on Coumadin that are just never going to get TPA, diverting them to that's their only shot.
Right.
That would make sense. I wonder if there's some way to build that into an algorithm. We don't have to decide this today.
Is the piece of it though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, have the conversation.
Right, but how many EMS providers, because I have this conversation on a daily basis, are aware that the person's on Xarelto, Eliquis, Coumadin, and they're taking it.
So
They're
every time you
they're
ask a
excluded.
question in the emergency
Right.
department, or you talk to the family, or you look at the records, what you get is appropriate information.
But
I think it is a change.
This goes to Dave's piece
Right.
as well, and that
Well,
maybe more needs to be done in terms of education. I'll just take a quick look,
Right.
call med control, and then we can make a good percentage decision.
we don't arm ourselves in the field with doing a men's score either. So,
Okay, so we'll still work on that advisory.
People just let it pass.
No, I think that these are all really good points, and I think that, it's a process, and, all these decision algorithms are, so dependent upon the person using it, that, and you never want to get a doc at the end of their shift. But,
Or an EMS provider.
but I definitely understand. I would hope that people would steer patients in the right direction, but we'll keep working on that. Still a draft process here.
Yeah, and if there's any comments to what you have in front of you, make sure you get them,
Yeah, and
so
just,
that
we can, send an email, and just, we can, put it all together, and come up with. ALS, BLS collaborative protocol rollout. We had a lot of input from our friends up north. Mike, do you want to talk about it now, and we'll just remove it from protocol below?
Sure, I mean, the rollout is completed for both BLS and ALS. There was an agency or two that had requested an extension for BLS. They'll let them know that there is a state guideline for doing that, but we provided several training methods and tools necessary to let people do the rollout. So I don't have anything to comment besides that.
And thanks to Dr. Cushman and his crew, because that's where all this stuff generated from.
And most of our EMS our ALS providers have completed the rollout. I think we have 18 in the entire region of about 700 that haven't completed it. Some of them are for medical reasons. Some people are on vacation, just haven't get it done. So those people are not providing care at this point in time, or should not be. And as soon as they do the rollout, we'll update their status and unsuspend them, and they'll be available to supply care. But most of our agencies have done a very good job. It was a late time in getting them out. Took a long time to get the update out, and but everybody's been pretty good in getting it back into us. But
How about the medical control? Am I the only one that's
No.
deficient?
No, there's,
no, you're not alone,
Surprised to
Mark.
me as well.
that's where I was going next, because the segue was perfect. So the only hospital that's complete is Good Sam, so that gives you an idea that it's quite a few.
We're almost done.
There are 5 institutions that have not provided any information, any updates, so we need to make sure everybody gets on board and updates their staff. We had a sudden director change at ORMC, so that's why this is pretty bad. Dr. Vora, as you guys all know, is no longer at ORMC, so we have just had interviews, and Dr. Matt May will be taking over the reins. So they're a little bit behind the 8 ball here, but we'll get them back up to snuff and on board. Bon Secours, St. Anthony's, Westchester Medical Center, you mean like the big medical center? Is that why that's on there?
yeah, we're not sure what they're doing.
Okay, Mid-Hudson and the Health Alliance. We need to get you guys on board to get them, and just we need the other institutions to complete them all, ORMC being the worst. So we will, the providers, pre-hospital providers have been much better. There's very few that are outstanding, and we really appreciate everybody's efforts to move this forward, and I think people were ready. Any comments, any concerns, questions? So we'll move forward on that and we'll help. The one thing the office would love to see is more communication from you guys. So when we're coming to a meeting, please RSVP to Karen, just because they like to know who's coming and who's not coming, so they can make contingencies and try to get a full quorum. So they just ask you guys to please RSVP back to the office when she sends out that email, and we appreciate it. Moving on, service upgrades, there's none today. Evaluation committee, did we hear from Dr. Rashad? No.
No.
the New York State Department of Health enforcements. There's only one. It's from mid-December. Wayne Edgar out of Brooklyn, New York, was suspended for 1 year and 5.5 months, effective in November, for a civil. He was assessed a civil penalty and a violation of Part 800. So Wayne Edgar out of Brooklyn, New York is the only enforcement action I have at this time. Helicopter committee, Dr. Larson.
I have nothing to report. No. So, the helicopter committee meeting, that was kind of my report for the last 2 years, is nothing to report. But the helicopter meeting, the helicopter committee met this morning at 8 o'clock here, and we had a good discussion. And what we are going to do is really there have been no sort of in-depth discussions about the use of air medical assets, how the helicopters are used in our region, the whole sort of concept of air medical assets in general. And we felt that we needed to sort of update everyone on the REMAC about the use of helicopters and stuff like that, and how they're used, how they interact with the ground EMS, and even sort of the transfer aspect and how they fit into the big picture. So what we're going to do is, starting at the next March meeting, we are going to have probably a 15-minute report put together, just kind of laying out the whole how air medical assets work, what happens when you make a call in the field, just to sort of familiarize everyone on the REMAC on how this whole system is working. And then we plan on each meeting, when we have a helicopter report, to have a little bit of update of some of the statistics, so that people have an idea of who's getting transported and how and when. We're going to discuss maybe some problem cases. We'll have some sample cases to talk about, and we're going to talk about specific topics. So the helicopter committee is going to get a little more active here. Our plan actually, and we welcome everyone to join, our plan is to meet a half an hour before this meeting, every meeting, every time we meet. So we have 4 more meetings in the 2020, and so the helicopter meeting will be happening at 9 o'clock here. Anyone is welcome to join and bring any kind of issue that they think is relevant. But we're going to have some regular presentations to kind of keep people informed about this whole, how do we use these air medical assets? How do they fit into our whole EMS system? And, quality control issues, all those kinds of things, and certainly any kind of controversial cases, stuff you want to talk about, we're happy to incorporate. So that's sort of our plan going forward. We want to make this a little bit more active committee. Certainly want to invite anyone who wants to come, and I think it'll help us in we were looking over, when was the last time we even looked at any documents about helicopters? The last document we could find was from 2011, okay? So 9 years have gone by here, and we sort of almost forgotten, maybe we may need to control this a little bit more. Maybe we need to use it more scientifically. Whatever, we have no idea what's going on. And so that's why we want to kind of bring this and freshen it up and make it an active part of this meeting. So that's our plan. So we will have a 15-minute or so presentation, kind of giving an overview in the March meeting. And certainly, again, we will be meeting at 9 o'clock on that, before that March meeting, so you're certainly welcome to come before, but we're going to do an official presentation. So that's a plan. Anyone else who was at the meeting has anything else to put in? But a number of people showed up this morning. It was a good meeting, and I think it'll be helpful just to give us a bigger picture.
Phil, can we maybe put that on the agenda as a pre-meeting
Sure.
to remind people?
Yep.
When did, I can't remember his name, the guy, no, Stu Miller.
Oh.
When did Stu Miller leave?
That was
What?
When did Stu Miller
Dave
leave?
Schumann, that was-
When my memory ended.
No, I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, because he was still supplying reports up until then. He's got to have information, because he was still supplying reports up until then.
Who is it now?
For medical direction, Dr. Kaku's out of Westchester.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Mike, I don't know why your name's under RTAC again.
I don't know either, and I don't even know when the last meeting was.
What? Yeah, RTAC?
Yeah, when was the last meeting? It was before this last.
It wasn't that long ago. I was there, it was at Westchester Medical Center.
Right, but that was before the last. meeting.
Yes.
Right
Yeah,
before the
that-
last REMAC, so there hasn't been another
There
one.
hasn't
Yeah,
been one.
the only thing, just let me say one thing is, the state sort of got interested in trauma again and sort of realized they, had no idea what was going on out there. And so they actually now want an official report from every hospital in New York State on trauma statistics and data and stuff like that. They said that was supposed to happen by January 1st of this year. And then a notice came out that said, forget all that, we have no idea what we want, we have no idea what you're supposed to put together in that report, and so we're putting it off, I think, at least until March or something. But anyway, it sort of put everyone on notice, all the community hospitals on notice as well, that, they need to sort of be tracking the trauma data. And that trauma data needs to be sent up to the state so the state can have some idea of what's going on in terms of the overall system. And I think that's a good thing. But anyway, of course, when the state put out this thing, they didn't really say what they wanted. And I'm not sure they know what they want. So they're figuring it out. And then but someone is supposed to be assigned at every hospital now to report over that data. And figure out, whatever, and their incoming patients and give them some type of trauma report.
All right. Quality improvement, Jeff.
Okay, the transition to NEMSIS 3.4 is virtually complete, and as of the 1st of January, we started on 3.5, which is going to be the bug fixes for 3.4. One of the issues that we have discovered in the last month is that with one specific vendor, not all of the charts created are actually coming through. So we have to go agency by agency, see how many documents they've pushed, see how many we've received. And with some of the smaller agencies, that's going to be a little more time consuming because of, number one, the call volume, and number two, how often they actually look at their emails. And that's going to be an ongoing issue probably throughout the first quarter. I know I talked to David last week, and your volume matched what we have. So we have at least one agency that's 100%. It's not strictly limited to that vendor. It's kind of across the board. Back in September, the state started running a report statewide on import failures and what the failure cause was so we can correct them. The Hudson Valley's import failure rate was 0.034%, which is pretty much statistically insignificant. So essentially we've had no import failures, especially looking at some other regions where one agency in one report had 15,000 to go through and fix. We had a meeting with ESO up in Sullivan County in the first part of December. That county is looking at being all electronic before the state deadline. They have a handful of agencies that are interested, and they are pursuing essentially a group purchase plan, and that will probably progress fairly well. And that will leave us with a couple of dozen agencies that are not electronic. And any agency that participates in the CME program has to be electronic before 1 January 21. Yes.
Jeff, can we look at regionally, making it a group purchasing plan for the smaller lots to be able to get on a wet product?
As long as we use one specific vendor, yes. That's not a problem.
Next week.
Yeah, so we're always off by a week.
That's about it.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Protocol Committee, Mike.
Just two quick additional items. One is at the last meeting, we had a presentation from Bethel Volunteer Ambulance Corps in Sullivan County to upgrade to become an AEMT agency. It was really a preliminary discussion with them. There's a great deal of work that needs to be done yet. Many of the questions are part of the application process anyway. And so essentially there's no action at this time. This is simply a notification that there are some discussions with them. Unfortunately, they're unable to provide it 24/7, 365. And so that is one of the challenges that we'll look at as we move forward and as they actually begin that process. And then the EMS Summit follow-up, we had a meeting here, I think it was in December. And so a new spin-off committee has been formed that's under the direction of Anthony Zhang from Beacon Volunteer. And so they'll be reporting in to the region. So that's moved from the protocol committee to its own committee. And they were even still determining what they were going to call themselves.
Yeah, they have an executive committee meeting scheduled here on Saturday the 17th. So they'll have a little bit more of an update for us.
And that's all I have.
Can I bring something up at this time for the protocol? I know it's going to follow the protocol, but can we wait until new business?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So we were just sort of having a little discussion here about the region potentially coming up with an advisory or a policy meeting, or maybe this is something that could get kicked up to the collaborative or a unified group, and come up with what we should do in the field for CPR cases. Do we transport? Do we not transport? You know, when is it feasible to do either? There's a lot of information from AHA that, listen, if this person is found in a system, they're probably going to stay there. Doing CPR in the back of a moving ambulance is not a good idea. You know, all these kinds of things, and we don't necessarily have a regional policy to say, hey, you guys get on scene, you've got a case, work it for XYZ time, it's a no transport, call med control, and then leave it. Or transport the patient if it's in a public space, or, you know, certain circumstances. And this is starting to come up for us as we move through the new collaborative protocols, as we move through some of the AHA changes, where some of our crews, there was an example just recently with a mobile life crew where the state police mandated them to stay on scene for 2 hours with a patient that clearly was not viable because it was considered a crime scene until the ME got there. These things are going to start coming up, but we don't have an actual regional policy or protocol to follow of what to do when, how, way. We have the clinical guidelines, but then operationally, we don't necessarily have a clear picture of what to do. Maybe we should come up with something, or I should say, can we come up with something that would help our providers out to give a clear objective process?
There is a protocol.
There's a protocol.
20 minutes, you get nowhere, you make a phone call. And then, because one of the reasons I kind of like the fact that they leave a lot up to that phone call is there's a lot of nuance. You know, if you have a 20-year-old who's asystolic for 20 minutes versus a 90-year-old for 20 minutes, you know, there's good odds that, you know, you're going to still transport that 20-year-old, you know, just on the nature of the fact that, there's a lot of surrounding issues with a 20-year-old dying, but also it's an organ donor potentially, you know. And so leaving it open somewhat to the phone call with medical control makes that, sort of allows for that nuance in cases. Whereas, I don't know, if you have like a very strict protocol, it's kind of weird. I have a feeling that 20-year-old's still going to get transported.
Yeah, we just had some weird cases come through that way where.
Did the state, sorry to interrupt, did the state police ask them to continue the resuscitation, or they just had to sit there?
They would sit there.
David?
Yeah.
So I can clarify that just a little bit. Because obviously one of our units was meeting a local volunteer fire department here in Lower Ulster County. It was a man down on the side of the road. Local volunteers responded, identified the gentleman to be in cardiac arrest, started the BLS CPR. Obviously loaded him in the back of the ambulance. Prior to initiating transport to a local Poughkeepsie hospital, the medic arrived, started working the patient up. Fell under the asystole protocol, contacted medical control out of a Poughkeepsie medical control facility who said, call the code, but we will accept the patient because obviously we're not going to leave them in a public environment there. To which the state trooper who was on scene said, no, if you're going to call it here, it's now a crime scene, you sit in the back of this ambulance until the medical examiner arrives and does their investigation. And I think part of what so that was an isolated case, but clearly the ambulance that now sat there for 2.5 hours with a deceased patient in the back of their ambulance and unable to respond to any further calls in their district created a hardship and a burden for the rest of the community. But more importantly, I think we have to look at the AHA guidelines, and they're pretty specific and pretty clear that unless you have a mechanical device to perform CPR, the safety of the crew and the effectiveness and efficiency of the CPR being provided doesn't make sense to transport it. And I think this is where David and Michael and I's conversation came around. We really need some kind of guideline here from this body to be able to give the providers to say, okay, you've got a 30-minute transport time of a patient, 20 years old in V-fib, but no mechanical device to do CPR. Are we transporting that patient? At what safety risks are we putting those crews in? The efficiency of that CPR, is it effective? And I think that if it's left to the provider, and I don't want to say they're going to make the wrong decision, but they're going to make what they think is the best decision at that moment, and it may or may not be the best decision ultimately for the patient. And I think having some kind of guideline that says, if you're in this situation and you're thinking about terminating it, contacting medical control and confirming that, even if it is a VFib or a pulse system tach arrest, is the protocol here in the Hudson Valley. And I think that's what we're looking for this group to make a decision on.
But isn't
as far as
that what the protocol is now? Contacting medical control after X amount of time? It is, right? So what would we need to change?
So
Or what am I not?
are we transporting that patient in the back of a moving ambulance doing CPR? That's the question that needs to be answered. And I don't know if anybody wants to make that decision. I don't know whether there's an ethical or a legal decision on that. And look at the national guidelines, they say, shouldn't be done.
But the protocol allows it to be either way.
Correct.
But the protocol that's out there now currently says that consider end-tidal CO2 in part of your decision reference. So if you have an asystole patient that has an end-tidal less than 8, that patient has 0 chance of being viable. Whether it's mechanical CPR or manual CPR. We had two particular cases that were presented to us in the last 3 weeks or so. One case, I completely agree with the provider, but it was left up to medical control option, and the medical control weighed in with, hey, it's a relatively young case, unknown downtime, kind of a fuzzy story to start, transport the patient. The second case was a respiratory case to start with, and proceeded for about 20 minutes, was asystole, but had 2 shockable rhythms, which goes against the protocol. So on that case, I totally agree with transporting that patient. So it's kind of, you're asking a medical provider to listen to a story that may or may not be crystal clear and make a judgment on transporting that patient. Because we can't declare in the field per protocol that was issued by this body or policy.
So maybe the thing to do is to bring it to protocol committee and we can sort of banter it around the room and come back with a suggestion. And as I'm listening to this a little bit more, I think a piece of that may very well be just a notification to other non-EMS agencies of some of how this is moving forward, so that it's a little bit easier for them to potentially pre-plan something that they may come in contact with, and not be sort of surprised by it.
Definitely the intention of the collaborative was to stay and try to do whatever you can. If it's a case that we can start the ACLS on and the resuscitative efforts, we pretty much all decided that we wanted to stay and give it a good shot, because it doesn't do us any good not to. And if somebody's going to come back, they're going to come back, most of the time. But using the end-tidal CO2 is a great little tool to have to kind of confirm one way or the other, and it's pretty effective. But I don't have an answer for, CPR in the back of an ambulance. This has always been an issue of, for safety reasons, we wanted to kind of try to get away from it. However, what is the answer? Because there's no, you're going to have to transport some of these people with, CPR still required. So it's a very difficult thing to say. And then, you say, hey, you all have to do CPR while you transport, then you have your first death. And then what do you're going to feel horrible with that, so it's a real double-edged sword, in my humble opinion.
Mobile Life doesn't want to buy 100 Lucases?
In general, it should be done.
That Dr. Baptist is.
Yeah, sure.
In general, it should be done. If you look at the literature, it should be done. It's not effective. And if you're going to do it for provider safety, it really should only be mechanical. But really, all the literature says you should stay, do resuscitative efforts, follow the Ottawa and AHA resuscitation termination rules, and not be doing CPR on dead people while you're trying to transport them.
Have they ever tried with trapezes? Suspend the provider above the patient?
No, trapeze, yes. Hang by the legs, and then each bump would actually give you a compression.
So back
Gravity
to Dave,
system.
back to Dave's point, honestly, this is going to still come down to the fact that we should probably, even if it's a notification, send something out.
Yeah.
Because BLS providers
Yeah, let's put a little bit more
are going
thought
to have
in.
an emotional component to
Yeah.
this. We're doing this on so-and-so that we know, we're putting them in the ambulance, we're transferring, because we've done this for the last,
Yeah.
since before he lost his mind.
Yep. Yeah. Rich?
I'm missing something here. This started out that the state police mandated they stay on the scene. You folks already made the decision that you called it.
Correct.
So the issue is, how do we get the state police?
That's
No,
an administrative issue. That's not a medical.
No, but that's why he's saying send out a notice of notification. Let's talk to them about this is what we do in that case. Actually, if we have real specifics on it, I would reach out to the troop that did that, because that's ridiculous, So, David, if you can
Just never
provide
put
me
them in
with
the back of the ambulance.
yeah.
Then they're not part of the crime scene.
Then definitely send me that, because that takes you out of the loop for 2 hours. That's a big hole for EMS providers, so.
Dr. Murphy, just to follow up on it. And again,
He called me Dr. Murphy. I had to look quickly. I was like, what? Am I in trouble?
No. What I will also encourage is that as you're talking about the cardiac arrest patient, that we start to at least put some language in there so that the providers, because once you start talking about cardiac arrest, is this a medical arrest or is this a traumatic arrest?
Yeah.
Are we using the same criteria for a traumatic arrest?
No, but we just have to be clear about it.
Right. So I think that the protocol just needs to.
We need to tweak it a bit and add some more details. And we should probably bring that to collaborative, Mike. Let's bring, or David, let's bring that to collaborative. No, but even to bring up, so everybody brainstorms on it, and are they doing something different? Do they have any regional variations that they've already put in place? Because I can't imagine we're the only ones thinking of this. So we'll probably be, next week, right, is our meeting?
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll be having a collaborative meeting, so we can, let's make sure we bring that up, because my memory, I won't remember.
Just the other corollary, which is probably also the most challenging part of this, is trying to educate the general public to this, because this is a big pressure on the EMS folks. They're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Excuse my language. Why aren't you putting this patient in the back of the ambulance?
Yeah,
and
no,
telling us?
no,
And
there's
I
a-
had this personal experience exactly
No
a year
question.
ago, but, or I was there, and it's like, everyone's looking at you, there's a crowd gathered, and why aren't you putting this person in the back of the ambulance and going? What are you doing here? with your little stupid CPR.
But the same token, oh, we're gonna go to the hospital now, they're gonna do something different that's gonna save money, right? So,
Yeah, that's true.
Just give the juice one more time.
and you might wanna consider some of the rules that other regions have as far as like, you know, obviously if you're in a public place and all those other, right? There's a lot of.
Yeah, there's safety concerns we always have to have, and that's, you know, that's the other issue.
If you're transporting.
Yeah.
No, right, it's.
A hostile environment, you know, we have to look at all those kind of variables.
Sorry, thank you.
No, it's nice to put it out there so we all can kind of think about it and bring forward what we think is the right, you know, what we can add, and, you know, these are all issues that we're all gonna come up against, and, you know, it's, you know, Eric has a personal one that, you know, he almost gets, lynched up on the nearest
Well,
tree.
certainly judged. I wasn't, there's a lot of judgment with that.
Yeah, what's that guy's name again? Where is he? Where does he work? Yeah, so I think it's really important that we do address those issues. iGel, so that's moving forward to be presented to the state for a pilot project. I'll keep you guys posted. We're going to talk about it this next week when we go up to CMAC. And there's a lot of interest in local area, volunteer course, so a BLS course. So we're definitely going to see what happens and try to move it forward.
Is that going to end up being like a regional pilot that a bunch of corps can?
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about. Would be, the initial presentation, you know, came from Greenville, but we would, quite a few people have put out an interest, so we could expand it. And I think it would give us decent numbers so that we'd come out of it with a good evaluation of whether we should have this going forward or not. In a reasonable period of time too, because as you know, some of these pilot projects, they take a long time because you don't get the numbers you need to really make a decision on. Whereas if we have that many corps, and I think it's up to 8 or 9 that we're interested, that we would have significant numbers. So CMAC is next week, nothing to report. And open forum. Yep.
Just a quick question. The 17-year-old EMT, I know they're going to be discussing it again next week, because they did approve it and we do have it. It's become a little bit of an issue amongst some of the volunteer squads, because one agency says no, the other agency says yes, that they'll allow them or supervise them. My concern, and I keep on saying it, is they can't sign an RMA for themselves. How can they accept one from an adult? So I bring it here because you guys are medical directors of these agencies, so you obviously, unfortunately, are attached to the decision made by the agency.
Yes, Dr. Ribridge.
So, my understanding from that is that is a certification-only rule. It allows them to sit for the exam and get certified. And I can say from my agency, I do not allow any of them to have a 17-year-old EMT as a charge EMT. I mean, they can ride, but there's got to be.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is maybe next week at the meeting, because I know it's going to be brought back up. Because when I was on council all those years, I kept on saying, this is the dangerous part of it. And looking at it in other states, they allow junior EMTs, so they're riding with another EMT. Right. I get it, but it's not pushed out to the agencies, and they're kind of doing what they want to. You have one agency saying, yeah, we'll take you all. And then you have the other agency sitting there going, well, we sponsored you.
Might be a nice thing for a CMAC advisory to address, perhaps.
Yeah, and just for a discussion, because again, the liability end of it is crazy.
We'll make sure. I'm sure it's going to come up though again, because it was kind of like a half conversation the last time, and it was still.
I was told it was going to be brought up again.
Yeah, it's still left with a lot of question marks. Oh no, New York State. Yeah, New York State put it out there, which I'm not against, to be honest with you, to try to draw some more interest into the pre-hospital arena, but I think we do need a little bit of operational guidelines for it.
I can tell you how the one agency dealt with it, because it became quite an issue. Hard feelings, personal feelings, and then another agency took the person in, and it was a whole mess. And the agency looked at it and said, by their bylaws, they're a junior member. And in order to be on the actual, it could be on the crew, but you have to have operating by the adult, or or the, whatever they're calling themselves, sector, they would have to have an EMT from that level. So without changing the bylaws, the agency's kind of protected itself. Because again, the young man was threatening lawsuits and how can you tell me I can't do my job? And, you know, and it got ugly. And then it festered through a bunch of the different counties that different people called me because they knew that what my feelings were up in state. And I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
But what was happening was we were going down to Jersey getting certified at 16 and coming up, which was a whole other, you know, animal that we dealt with over the years. But, and it does exist, the junior EMT. I'm not saying we need them, because we need to grab them before the firehouse gets them. The firehouse grabs them faster than we can.
Yeah, and I think that getting people to have the taste of what it is like at a young age gets them more interested and more passionate about, you know, making a career out of it. And, you know, if we can think of some creative ways to get them into the fold and, you know, like you say, gobble them up before fire or nursing does. the two arenas. Okay, so I'll make sure that's brought up too. I'll report back to you guys to let you know, but I'm sure it's going to, you know, I think one of my colleagues there is bringing that up because it was an issue. All right, anything else on open forum?
Yeah, I have an email that was sent out from Dutchess, comes from the Department of Homeland Security, with everything going on with Iran. They're not concerned about them invading the U.S., but they are afraid of them doing terroristic attacks within the country. There's no specific threat yet. They just want to sit here and have everybody remind their staff situational awareness with what's going on now. Be a little more attentive in their surroundings.
Yes. It will be certainly domestic in its origin, I'm sure. Anything else? Okay. So we can't vote on the minutes. That was the only thing we really needed to vote on. We'll do it next time. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The next meeting is, you know, Care?
Nope.
March 2nd.
March 2nd. Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody.